So Scott, so glad you're here today. We're going to be talking so much about the buying and selling of the home today. But before we jump into that, why don't you give me a little bit of your background? I know we have a little similarity and from the ministry aspect of what you've done, but give me a little bit of your background.
Thank you, Paul. It is great to be here. Yep. My name is Scott Hosey, and I got into real estate. I am going into year 7 here, and it's been a really cool journey because it wasn't one that I necessarily picked. Very unusual entry into the business, but was a pastor at a church and truly loved doing the work of being a pastor. But at the end of the day, you're working for an organization, and the employee aspect of that just wasn't the best fit for me. And so I really...
So you don't like working for somebody?
I couldn't.
Is that the undertone?
I couldn't do it. I couldn't.
Not even in a church?
Not even in a church. I mean...
Are we learning more about you right now than we need to?
You might be. It's so funny because you're working for God, but at the same time, you're in an organization that you have to get things done. And a lot of people don't know that. You know, you think of somebody that works at a church, you know, what do you do Monday through Friday? Sit around, hold hands and pray. And then on the weekend, you show up, meet people and pray for people.
Nope.
Nope. It takes a lot of people and doing a lot of things to pull off what happens on the weekend, happens. It starts Monday through Friday, and just really struggled as an employee, but I didn't know that at the time. I just knew that something wasn't right. Something wasn't working for me internally. And so I knew that season had ended, left my job at the church, had no clue what I was going to do.
So you left the church before you knew you were going to go to real estate? I didn't know that.
Which it's really cool looking back and seeing that I had the faith to do that.
Wow.
In the moment it was pretty scary. I knew, our financial position was good enough that I'm like, okay, I know I have enough time that I've got the ability to figure this out and do it the right way. I wasn't putting myself or my family in a bad position, and I wanted to be patient with the process to see, where God was going to take me and what needed to happen. But yep, that was a really cool relationship building thing with God, seeing, can I trust him in this way where I can be jobless voluntarily and see what he wants to do. But I felt like that was going to lead me into the best opportunity rather than trying to line something up, feeling like I needed this seamless transition. And we'll talk about, there's a lot of aspects of that will apply to the home selling and buying process.
Can't wait to dig into that.
We'll come back to that. And so ultimately left my job at the church and interviewed with other places, other, employee type jobs. And in every interview, I kept feeling some level of discomfort that I'm like, the pay is great here. And going from, church salary to the business world, I'm like, the pay would be amazing. This sounds so great, but nothing felt quite right. And what kept coming up that I did not want to keep coming up was real estate, because I knew so many real estate agents that I honestly just didn't like. And
you didn't want to be one of them.
I didn't want to be just like.
But little did you know.
Yep. And I knew great real estate agents too. I felt like, I downplayed the work that they did was part of it. And part of that was because I had only ever bought a house.
Hold on a second. I want to dig into that. I know we're going to get into a lot of stuff, but what was your opinion of a real estate agent before you were a real estate agent? Because maybe that was a Freudian slip right there or whatever, but
it's not as bad as I probably made it sound. It's the way agents would promote themselves. And they teach you this if you go online and take any class about how to grow your business as a real estate agent.
It's all about your name.
And they tell you every conversation should end with, if you know of someone buying or selling, let me know. Or if you're thinking of buying and selling, let me know. And it's always ends with, look at me, come to me, work with me.
And that didn't resonate with you?
No, couldn't connect with that at all. I mean, I hated sales for that very reason. I never wanted to be pushing anything. And I knew I could help people in the process because I knew I could become an expert. I've always loved learning things and absorbing information that could be useful and then repackaging it in a way that other people could then benefit from it. So I knew that part I'd have covered, but I was not fond of the idea of selling myself, of having to package myself and then have to advertise myself to people I knew. People that trusted me, I was now going to be advertising to.
I'm with you on that. I can't stand the whole self-promotion thing. It drives me nuts.
But conflicting with that was this idea that I could be my own boss, run my own business, and do it with virtually no overhead to start. And so
next thing you know.
So this low barrier to entry, and and something that I believed I could do better than other people. I knew I needed time. I couldn't do that overnight. I needed time and experience, but I knew what I was capable of, and I just needed to overcome those perceptions that I didn't have to do that. I didn't have to be that. Now, I did kind of put my toe in the water. I'm like, you can't be a secret agent, as they say. And so you have to let people know what you're doing. And, I pushed myself in front of my sphere probably more than I was comfortable with. But, in some ways it helped me because, that discomfort created some growth. But ultimately discovered that, hey, that's not me. And I don't have to build a business that way either. So I was able to walk away from having to do any of that. And now I get to do all of what I love. Get to do it with people in very meaningful ways, and just have an incredible time doing it.
So been in a real estate agent now for 7 years.
Yeah.
You own your own business outright with?
That's right. Yeah. So I ended up bringing in my dad as a business partner. He got into the business a couple years after I did. And the way it works in real estate is you got to have 2 years of full-time experience to open your own firm. So I actually worked for somebody else. But he was super chill. He let me run my aspect of the business my own way. I mean, I think the second full year, I had one conversation with him the entire year.
Oh, wow.
Truly ran my own business. And,
split off.
But I knew what was coming. As soon as I got,
2 years, one day.
2 years in a day.
You're that guy.
Oh, I had the paperwork all filled out, ready to go.
That's awesome.
And so that was opened the firm. Dad got into the business. He needed somewhere to work, same thing. So he does his 2 years of hard time, as we call it. And now he's eligible to open his own firm. It's like, what's the point of having two separate firms in the same town? You're, like I said, you're running your own business anyway. Let's just have a shared brand, a shared umbrella, and we can each run our own businesses within that. We'll have some shared overhead, but it's pretty minimal. And
that's awesome.
Yeah. And we've had a really cool time.
All right. So there's so many times when an investor or homeowner is thinking about buying or selling a house, that it's so easy to get overwhelmed. I just went through this with you not too long ago. We worked on finding a lot or a place for me to buy for 6-8 months. And we just sold my home, a couple months ago, and that wasn't that bad. But just the whole aspect of buying or selling a house is definitely overwhelming. So before we jump into what we're going to do to set somebody up for success, whether you've sold a home once or twice or 100 times, we're going to go over the basics. But even before we get to that, let's talk about understanding, what influences buying or selling, a house. When should I understand what I'm either getting into, or when's the best time from the market? What do you think when you're going to talk to me and hey, Scott, I want to sell my house, or I want to buy a house. What's your first line of advice to me?
Gosh, I mean, it depends, if you already own a house, there's entirely different conversation than somebody who's never bought a home before. Mm-hmm. If you already own a home, you're so deep into it, you're going to own a home the rest of your life. It's just a matter of which home and, what kind of upgrades or decisions you're making on where and the size and location, all that. The first-time home buyer, they've got the biggest hurdle, the biggest obstacle to cross, that decision to become a homeowner.
Because they have no experience.
Yeah. You really don't know, is this even the smart thing to do? Mm-hmm. People spend a lot of money on their homes, and rent can often be cheaper, especially in the short term. You don't have to worry about any of the repairs or maintenance. Mm-hmm. And you can kind of just coast through.
But just about every financial expert everywhere says buy a home.
And that's where we come back to. Anytime somebody wants to talk about buying or selling a house, it's big picture. What do you want to accomplish? Are you buying a house out of necessity? Are you buying a house out of luxury? You buying a house just because you're tired of where you've been living? Mm-hmm. You need a change of scenery.
What's a legitimate good reason to buy a house, or exchange a house? If you think about it from a smart financial standpoint, what are legitimately good reasons to make a decision? And on the flip side, maybe we can talk about some legitimately horrible reasons.
Yeah. So, from a big picture, you could argue there's really not a good reason to change houses. So I grew up
coming from
we moved every 2 years as a family.
Oh, wow.
And so by the time I was 18, we had lived in got probably 10 houses.
Jeez.
I mean, we moved a little bit more than every 2 years.
Is this locations like in the same area?
We lived in Florida for 10 years and then 8 years in Asheville. So, but like even within those markets, we lived in several different houses.
Jeez.
And I think about all of the money lost in the transaction costs.
Oh man.
And what if all of that money had been saved and invested? And here we are 20 something years later.
Yeah.
What could that have done?
Correct.
So I'm a little bit scarred by personal experience because there is such a thing as overdoing it.
Yeah.
But, realistically, we may need to move. And moving could be as simple as downsizing, which could consolidate your life. And
which could be a very legitimately good reason.
Yeah. Shoot, we sold our house and we got some short-term housing. We lived in a 2-bedroom apartment for 3 months with 3 kids. So 5 of us in a 2-bedroom apartment for 3 months. Was probably one of the most productive times of my life because I couldn't bring any of my stuff with me. That was all in a storage unit. And so to consolidate things, my business grew, my personal life grew, my friendships grew. It was probably one of the most productive times of my life. And so I have clients that want to do that.
Yeah.
It's you build your life around this house and the things you can have and the amenities you can have. But then you find out that the more you have, the bigger the handcuffs.
So I have a course that I put together a while back called the Investor Empowerment Course. And one of the tests I have before you retire, I call it the 600 square foot apartment test. And I stole this from a client of mine. But the test basically comes down to exactly what you're saying. If you had to take your entire life of what you have in your house, your cars, your clothing, your stuff, and just take with you enough to fit into a 600 square foot apartment, what would your life change? Like, how would it look like? And because he did that, because they're building a house, so they just took the bare necessities. I don't even think it was a fully furnished apartment. All they could take is clothes. And he's like, my life completely changed.
It's freeing.
He's like, where we ate, what we did. Yep. He's like, everything changed.
Opportunity abounds.
Yes.
But it's hard to see that when you feel handcuffed to your stuff. Yeah. Because some of it's like guilt sets in. You see all this stuff and you can't enjoy everything you own daily. And so some guilt sets in. It's like, I can't go out to that thing or we can't go on that vacation because we don't even, enjoy some of these things we have here. And it can be a weird dynamic. And so sometimes it's consolidating your life and downsizing both the size of where you live and the amount of things you carry with you.
So let's just say you have a good reason or even a not so good reason, like your past moving I want to dig. I'd love to dig into that, but it doesn't matter. What are some good factors? What's some influential factors in making a smart decision if you want to move or buy a home?
Yep. Zoom out, think big picture, think long term.
Okay.
You may end up making a decision that's focused short term, but you got to consider the long term. A lot of people don't think about their exit strategy. Which, people talk, when you start a business, people talk, business development gurus will tell you have an exit strategy.
So you're thinking about the end in mind to begin with.
Yep.
Okay.
That's right. Have some kind of escape hatch that, if this doesn't work out due to things, whether they be in your control or things beyond your control, economy, job, just demands on your life. How do I get out of this? And best case scenario, worst case scenario, how does that play out? And will I be okay? Can I swallow the consequences of that? What are also, think about the positive things. What are the potential upsides and rewards of this? Mm-hmm. And oftentimes that can steer.
How would a home buyer know a good exit strategy or how they could get out of a house? Like if you're telling me, think about, the end in mind. Okay. So 2 years from now, like taking, consideration what your parents did, what would go through my mind of how am I going to get out of this house?
Well, Paul, you got to talk to a professional real estate.
Are you promoting yourself right now?
No, I'm not. Definitely not doing that. Evaluate where is the home that you're thinking about purchasing, or where are you thinking about living, and what's the future of that city? Are people leaving town because they want to live in more exciting climates
or a
and,
better school district.
Yeah,
or
yes.
things like that.
Yeah, and what's the are we in a bad school district, but I think it'll be good in the future. It's some places are bad today, but they've got long-term potential growth, and some places are great today, but it's not sustainable, and eventually it'll deteriorate.
Okay, so because in some of the research that we have done preparing for this, a lot of the factors that are in the research that I had discovered and that we had kind of gone through, we're not really touching any of those. And this one thing that you brought up today was like have the end in mind, like, shoot, that threw me a curveball here. But it's so true.
Yeah.
Even as I'm building a house right now, I'm thinking in the back of my mind, what's appropriate, what's a good upgrade, what's a cost-effective way of doing X. Because at some point, not that my wife and I would ever sell it, but you never know, are we going to be able to get that money back out? I had a conversation with Brian earlier today about renovating houses and what's a good investment and a bad investment. And I think that's what you just brought up is the most important thing. What's the exit strategy? Is this a good use of investment dollars, comfort dollars, fun dollars, whatever you want to call them?
Yeah.
Is it a good investment? Sometimes you might say no, but it's what you need.
Bingo.
Because you need that rest. You need that place of tranquility in your backyard. You need that
I immediately think of
pool.
That's exactly what I think of. Somebody buys a house with a pool, and one of the potential exit strategies is you could always move out but keep it and rent it out, and that can cover the mortgage, and that could solve a lot of problems. But you get a house with a pool, and most property managers, the landlords aren't going to love a property that has a pool. It's things that can go wrong and big liabilities.
Yeah.
So it kind of takes that aspect out of it, and that could be a reason for not buying a house. But you may decide this is the benefit to my family outweighs the cost of the investment.
Correct. All right, so let's switch gears and talk very specifically, if we can, about when's the best time to buy a house. Now, the environment currently is not as great as it was like even a year ago or 2 years ago. And this isn't to bash on the current economy. The realities are rates are up, economy's weak. Although depending on what newslet you watch, you might say, they say it's not weak at all.
True.
Everything's more expensive right now.
Yeah.
And I want to attack that. But before we touch on the obvious, let's just talk about the big picture, forgetting about our current state and like looking at just states in general of what are some things that I need to consider, homeowner needs to consider of what's appropriate, what would help me understand now is the time to make this.
Yeah.
But I don't want to discount like a job change, like the obvious, like you're in this state, now you need to move to this state.
Necessity is one thing.
Yeah. Not counting those.
Yeah.
Just, hey, we live in this area. We want to move to this area in the same city because of X.
The most ideal scenario is you sell your house in the spring, you buy your house in the fall. I wish I had more clients that would buy between October and December because it is so easy to get houses that clients like.
Really?
It's not just easier.
Even though everybody puts their house up in the spring?
Yeah, but there are still sellers. I mean, and we did it with your house. Shoot, I've always got listings in the fall,
Yeah.
I had a listing. We listed it September 1st. It's like, they say don't sell your house in the fall, but some people, it's just the right time. And so, we listed this one September 1st and had almost no interest. We had people making offers $150,000 less than the list price. This is $1 million property.
Wow.
But still, that's a pretty big, 10%.
That's huge.
And it was, so the answers were no, sorry, no.
Yeah.
And we get to December, end of December, because this was between Christmas and New Year's. And I remember we had an offer that was being negotiated $100,000 less than list price. But then right as we get to January, somebody comes in. We had not fully negotiated or agreed to this other deal. Somebody came in full price and bought the house.
In January.
In January.
1. Happy New Year.
But like at the end of the day, it ended up being a multiple offer situation. Mind you, the thing had been on market since September 1st. If people had shown up and been interested in looking weeks before,
yeah,
They had plenty of time to negotiate a deal, but people waited. And then it's like, we're getting close to January 1st and people start thinking, oh, it'd be great to have a lake house.
Yeah.
And now, but guess what? Everybody else had that idea too.
So what about things like your credit score or, free cash flow? Like, how do you take some of that stuff into consideration?
Yeah. I mean, if you don't have the credit and
what is a good credit?
Yeah. You need to be above 620, like baseline. You really should be at 680 to have the good impact of benefiting from it. And
benefiting lower rates.
Low rates. Yep. And and if you got to chip away at it, if you've got personal debt, that's going to get in the way.
Yeah.
Credit card debt, car loans.
How do you give advice? And this might be out of your territory, but it definitely is full of encompassing yours. How do you know how much you can afford? And I'm not asking that out of ignorance as a financial advisor on this side of the table, but how would you do that? Yeah.
Well, so the banks are going to lend you money based on what they call a DTI, debt to income ratio.
Okay.
And so they've got specific numbers, 2836 is probably the most common one that gets used. So 28% of your gross monthly income can be allocated towards your housing. Would be, then so that'd be 36% could be gross, all of your housing costs. 28% towards your mortgage, 36%, including all of your other necessities to live.
Like heating and cooling and stuff like that.
Yeah, utilities and taxes.
So you look at somebody's making $100,000. You're looking at $30,000 or $36,000, 28 to 36,000, all in for the cost of a home.
Yes. Yeah. So if you're spending, 70% of your income, 80% of your income on just having fun.
You're what they call house poor, right?
Yep.
All right. So then is there any other big item, like, there's financial readiness on here. You talked about the debt to income, real estate market conditions is another thing. Like how do I know, like, which one of these is most important to me to know this is the ideal time to sell a house? Even if, I know interest rates are so much higher today than they were a year ago, but they're average. Like the rates that we see right now are historical average rates in the last 100 years. So this isn't like, oh my gosh, or anything like that. Like I've never seen rates this high. It's just, we haven't seen rates this high in a long time.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that rates aren't going to go back down. This might be that spike before rates drop again, right?
Right. To me, the whole conversation is about, am I financially ready? Can I make the payment? If I lose a job, what would I do to make the payment? Do I have cushion to make the payment in between jobs and in between having income? And worst case scenario, what could I do if the value has gone down and I cannot sell it at a loss because I would have to then pay the bank money that I don't have.
Yeah.
Could I rent it out? And it's thinking kind of a multi-phase exit strategy like we talked about. So you got to have some financial cushion, and that number is different for everybody. And I think probably the best way to approach it is talking to people about that. No, I don't think anybody should make that decision on their own or for themselves. You got to bring other people that are not emotionally invested, because let's be honest, we're all emotionally invested into our own finances.
Who would those people be?
A loan officer and a real estate agent.
But aren't they emotionally tied to the income?
Yes. Then it's where you got to get people you trust.
Yeah. I don't disagree. Yeah, I'm not battling you here.
Because but you're right. Because you call a random bank or get an online lender, and they're looking to make a sale, and they're going to tell you,
push you.
They're going to tell you qualify. It's time to buy.
Yeah. So if you had to look at your own circle of influence, or I were to look at mine, who would I talk to? It would probably not be the people in my life that you would expect, like my close parents or somebody like that, or a trusted friend. I'm a financial advisor, so everybody's like, who would you go to? It would probably be the most stingy people in my life. The ones that don't spend a lot of money. The ones that I know would give me a hard time. Yeah,
they're going to be because they're conservative.
Super conservative.
With their finances,
those are the ones that I want to talk to.
They play it safe.
Yeah, the ones that I know I'm going to go and they're going to instantly go, don't buy it.
Yeah.
Just because I want to hear their thought process, because my gut, my go-to, I'm such an optimist, which I can appreciate because I know you are too. It's just, let's go. We'll figure it out. As long as you're prayed up, as long as you feel that the Lord's behind it, let's go. But you can have a good Christian influence around you that feels the same way, but their gut is, we'll just stay. So I want to get that other opinion where that same person is going to be just as godly, just as prayerful, but they're going to go, don't do anything. Because I just want to hear what goes through their mind and why they're going to be that way. Because my instant knee-jerk reaction is, go, baby.
Yes,
We'll
and don't look
out.
back.
Yeah.
But yeah, you got to have somebody that can, it's not just the worst case scenario, but just alternative reality to, I don't think you should do this, and here's why.
Yep.
And to consider all these aspects, because we cannot see it from all sides as an individual. But other people, if you have a loan officer and, an agent, it's like, it's why I say it, because I take it for granted of the partnerships I have and what I get to do and the way I do it. But you're right. A lot of other people out there will be looking just to make a sale. And so people from your sphere, financial advisor and a friend, a family member, somebody you respect in your community. I mean, they're people, what's true about people? People love sharing their opinion.
They do.
And so
that's why you're here.
It's true. I do love talking.
You made you stop. I made you stop talking. All right. So a couple months ago, I reached out to you and I said, hey, Scott, we've got this program, this platform called Planning Made Simple. And one of the biggest things that we want to do there is we want to team up, partner with other professionals in completely different spaces to help create material. And that material being a wide range of just about anything from home buying to lending to doing taxes. I've even considered getting chefs in there, and teaching us how to cook. But, at the end of the day, when we were talking, the first topic that we brought up that you could build a class, which we've done, we're working on getting that filmed, which was the whole home buying process. So let's talk about that quickly.
Yeah.
From I've got this idea that I want to buy a house to closing and signing your life away, which takes forever. Walk me through that as quickly, as slowly as you want. Maybe more quicker than slow.
I can't be long-winded.
To help somebody understand like what they're getting into, and even for the people that have bought and sold homes a lot, sometimes it's just a good refresher, good idea to say, oh yeah, I maybe need to spend more time on that aspect of it. So what's the whole process here?
Yeah. First thing is, thinking of a budget. What do you think you can afford?
My favorite word.
What do you think you can afford, and how did you come up with that? I mean, this is such a good excercise for anybody to
This
go
is that
through.
28 to 36%?
Yeah.
Or is this different?
No, this is that.
So the government, the governing bodies that be, let's not get too emotional right now, even saying that my blood starts boiling. Sometimes I feel like they set us up for failure, or they make rules by somebody who doesn't understand the real world.
Mm-hmm.
Is 28 to 36% legitimate? Is that the banking world that, that's your max? Like 36% is like, you're stretching it thin, and you said that 70%, like realistically, coming from an expert, coming from somebody who understands this world, where should somebody really be? Not what they qualify for. Where should somebody really be? Or is that too general? Like you can't give advice like that.
Oh yeah. I don't know. That's a tough one.
I don't know. It's not going to cut it. I'm going to need,
I know.
I'm gonna need something.
Here, I'm processing. I do think everybody would come to a different conclusion. And some conclusions, like my own, in the way I would approach it personally, I'd be at like the 20%. But
so lower.
But that's not reality. I mean,
because
you
can't afford.
Bingo.
So reality, I was having this conversation with another person earlier this week of budget and cost. And he was like, yeah, if I could afford this, I'm going to have to go 30 minutes outside of the city.
Yes.
To live the way I want to live, but I can't afford the location of where I want to live.
Correct.
So that's That's a tough one.
It is. And that's why it changes depending on what you need, because if your life demands you to be in a certain area, you can't legitimately do that. Now you can have a goal though, and this is where it pays off to think about the end, from the beginning, begin with the end in mind. Like, let's start there. So if you want to be at 20, 25% of your gross monthly income spent on housing, but I can't do that today, I can work my way there if I'm aware that exists. And you got to come back to this from time to time too, because you'll lose sight of it.
Yeah, happens all the time.
It does. To the best of us.
All right, so budget's number one. What happens after that?
Yep, pre-approval. Now through the budgeting, you think you know what you can afford. Now it's time to bring in a professional or the people with the money and have them evaluate
the banks, the lenders,
and have them tell you what you can afford. Now, more than likely,
is this a hard process?
It's difficult. It's easy. I was gonna say it's difficult. It's not difficult.
Another Freudian slip.
They are difficult sometimes. They are difficult later in the process. They will not be difficult here because, again, they're trying to get a sale.
How long? What's this take? Like a sheet of paper? What is this?
Part of it depends on how readily available your information is. I mean, you got to produce some documentation to get a pre-approval. Now, a pre-qualification is different. A pre-qualification is me telling the bank, hey, I make this amount per year. They run a credit check and they see credit score is 700. He told us that he makes this amount of money per year. Yeah, you can afford this size house. That did not account for, I could have actually made that amount of money, but I didn't tell them that I take 60% of it and expense it. And that matters.
Oh, geez.
I had a client, well, they never actually bought.
Self-employed.
There was a client that was a cab driver and they received a lot of money in cash. And so when she said how much I was like, those are different numbers. And the banks couldn't.
Because she's like, I live good.
Yep.
But that's not what you claim.
She was living real good.
But she can't qualify for a house.
Banks said too risky. She doesn't actually make that according to the government. So you got to talk to the professionals. They're going to ask for documentation. And if you can produce that documentation, they want W-2s, 1099s, whatever your statements of income that the government sees, they want to see those. So if you can't find those, I have clients that it takes them weeks to produce those because they're so unorganized. But if you're organized and you have easy access to your documents, you could have a pre-approval done within several hours.
Yeah.
I could have you on the phone at noon today and you're pre-approved by 5 o'clock.
Do you remember how... Was I unorganized or unorganized?
You were very organized.
I couldn't remember.
You had every piece of paperwork anybody ever wanted.
All right. Then after, so you got budget pre-approval, then comes, what's number 3 here?
Yeah. Number 3 is time to find a real estate agent.
How do you find a good agent?
Best way is talking to people.
So go to friends and family, ask around.
Yep.
Charlotte's one of these areas where everybody knows 17 real estate agents.
It's true. And that's why those conversations will matter, because the good ones will rise to the top.
Mm-hmm.
You know
you on referral.
That's right.
I asked around.
And the good ones will rise to the top, because even the guy that referred me, he knew many agents, you knew many agents.
And he's one of the people at the church.
And
you had left the church obviously on good terms.
That's right.
Yeah.
And, ended my season well. And, that's a whole other conversation.
Bitterness.
That's a whole other conversation. When you sell your house and leaving it well, it's like, people can leave it in such bad condition. And I'm like, this is going to come back on you someday. End seasons well. And so when you have conversations with people in your sphere,
just ask around.
And let people vouch. And they don't necessarily have to have used that agent, because some people haven't. Some of my best referral sources have never actually bought or sold a house with me, for various reasons, but they know me so well that they know I'm the guy.
So this is interesting because, when I talk, where somebody comes to me, like you can almost test me out first. You sit down, we have conversations. You want to get a feel for, like, how does it work in your space? Because I just kind of trusted. Although when I first talked to you, I actually might have been. It was between you and I think 2 or 3 other reps. I forgot about that.
I got interviewed and
you
I didn't know it.
You got interviewed and you didn't know it. You came on very high referral. I had 2 other people that I had spoken to, and maybe it was the same thing. So what?
I think that's the key. Just
get a feel for it.
Yeah. I say interview. It's not that formal. It's get to know somebody, and just don't emotionally commit to. I think that's, people think they're interviewing an agent, but then they end up hiring the first agent they talk to. Because
would you recommend a home buyer? Like, do you give out references? Like, have you ever been asked for that? Or would you recommend?
I have volunteered references for somebody who was just very skeptical. He had not sold a home, I think, in his life, and he bought his home 30 years before. And so he genuinely didn't know any real estate agents. He knew that I sold somebody else's house on the street. I actually sold 2 people's houses on that street. So I had some credibility, at which point
You had some street cred.
I had actual street cred.
Actual.
That's right.
funny.
That's funny. So he knew I'd actually sold houses. That wasn't the issue, but I wanted him to know that people had great experiences in those houses too. So I provided contact information. I followed up with the people's info I provided, and they said he never reached out, which is pretty much the case. I mean, even when employers ask for references, oftentimes they're not actually calling to verify them. I suggest that you do. You can learn a lot.
I guess that was my point is, would you recommend somebody? My gut would say yes, because I vetted you before I ever hired you years ago.
Yeah.
And that worked out great.
It does not hurt. And sometimes you can get little nuggets of wisdom that you can learn about somebody's personality ahead of time that makes the experience even better.
Yeah.
If you know what to expect from me and what not to expect from me, you're going to enjoy the process a whole lot more, rather than having to, just figure it out.
Correct. All right. So then the fun begins. So we've got our budget, we've got our pre-approval, we've found a rock star real estate agent, and then it's the house hunting. What this is probably the most exciting part.
It's
right?
absolutely the most fun part. Yeah, you get to go look at houses. Now, so I will mention, sometimes I'll go look at a house before any of those other steps happen, because somebody is clearly excited to start this process, and I don't want to dampen that excitement by saying, cool, let's talk to a lender. Cool, let's talk about budget. Interview me. I don't want to junk it up. I want to take their excitement and get them in a house as fast as I can so they can visualize the dream that they had sitting at their own dining room table. So sometimes I'll do a showing or 2 before the process even really starts. And a lot of times too, you'll find out, they might be a year away from buying. Those weren't wasted showings. I didn't go show those houses pointlessly. Didn't waste their time or my time, because they needed some kind of rep of seeing, what does this look like to go see a house? How much time does it take? How much time am I going to need in my schedule to go look at houses? How many houses am I going to need to see before I find the right one? I mean, this is all stuff. And if you've got a demanding life or a job, you got to be able to budget for the time aspect of it. So showing a house before the process begins certainly doesn't hurt, but we don't do that every time. So sometimes this is, this kind of step 4 traditionally. But yeah, I love to
but
get
not
out
necessarily in that order.
Right. Yep, exactly.
Yeah, because I've got it. I don't know why it's numbered this way. It's not my material.
Yeah. No, I mean, traditionally, like, this is the standard order sequence of events, because what good does it really do to go look at houses only to find out you're not even close to being qualified to buying one.
All right. And then after you find your house hunting, you find the dream home or the one you feel good about it, then you what?
You make an offer. It's go time, baby.
So the making an offer becomes a little butterfly-ish,
That's
in your
my
stomach.
most exciting day. I experienced that this morning. It's not something you experience every day. And, average client might see 6, 7, 8 houses before they find the right one. So I had a client tell me a month ago that we looked at 50 houses together. I said, I'm glad you didn't tell me that.
Is this like that, we're going to date for 6 years before we get married thing?
It's
like,
exactly
what?
like that. I said, if I had been keeping track, I would have given up on you long before now. I didn't sign up to show you 50 houses.
Oh my God.
But fortunately, I enjoyed their company so much that it did not feel like 50 houses. But he kept track. He kept count. So that was an anomaly. It is typically somewhere between 6 and 8 houses. I've had one client, she's bought 2 houses, and she bought the first house she saw both times.
Wow.
That was extreme.
Wow.
She's the only one I've ever had out of 150 clients that has ever bought the first house she saw. And
and did it twice.
Did it twice. I know. Yep. So most people need to see a few houses, and and the biggest thing is you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And until you get out there and see there, you don't even know what's important to you.
Yeah.
So many people will give me a set of criteria for what they're looking for and what they want most in a house, and they'll buy something, not the total opposite, but something that's pretty different.
Because when you get boots on the street, you're just like, no, I don't like that.
Yep.
Like that.
And things that you thought were really important, all of a sudden go straight to the cutting table, and it's like, a garage, for example, have to have a garage, until you realize all the homes in your budget that have a garage are nowhere close to where you want to be. And it's like, I guess I can live without the garage.
Yeah. That's
And,
awesome. All right. So we make an offer. then becomes the most difficult. And I hate this part, negotiating the contract. Now let's play devil's advocate a little bit here, because most people will probably hire a real estate agent, but some people don't. And let's just say, let's talk about how much work you do there to negotiate. Because when you did all this for me, I didn't do anything.
Yeah.
I just gave you my 2 cents.
Right.
I'm like, heck no. Or hey, I'd work with that. And then you're going like, walk me through like what you do, what a real estate agent or what a home buyer has to do on their own to negotiate a contract.
Yeah. Well, it's all about knowing how much leverage you actually have. And as an agent, when you do this repeatedly, particularly in the same area and with similar clientele, you know exactly how much leverage you have because you might have shown the house right down the street to another client and you heard for yourself the feedback that they had on why they liked it, why they didn't like it, how much they would have paid for it. And you can use these collective...
And you know a lot of the other realtors.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. You've got relationships from working with them before, potentially, or working with somebody in their office. You might have mutual contacts. I mean, because, there's so many agents. Like, there's just no way to know them all. I mean, every day I encounter an agent that I haven't talked to before. But that doesn't mean I'm going blind into a working relationship with them. But, knowing how much leverage you have and the situation. Because every good listing agent is going to kind of, puff the chest a little bit. And
I'm going to get my offer.
That's right. But the reality of the situation. Yeah. If you're a full-time agent and doing this, it's like, I know this is a slow time of year. I know that the unit down the street, was either better or worse. I know that how that impacts this one. Yeah. I know how buyers are going to see this unit or this home. Not just I know how my client sees it. I know how other people see it too. And it just gives you enough leverage to make a realistic but fair offer. And then negotiating, there's the pre-offer phone call, to the other agent and talking through with them, hey, what's at play here? Do you have any other offers? That's kind of like the max question. And then it's like, no, we don't have any offers, but we've got a lot of showings. Oh man, I know it's busy out there, and you start talking, and in talking, you realize we're good for right now. Mm-hmm. I can make an offer without undue influence of losing it to somebody else potentially. Or you might find out, hey, this is pretty competitive. Like if you want this thing, we got to step up. So
which has been the market for a while.
It's true.
It's starting to cool off, but not too bad.
Yep. And we've had great experiences over the last few months where people are able to negotiate better deals because you pay attention to the details and the leverage of the situation.
And that's becoming more and more important now as the market conditions are changing, where before it's like, no, just add more money. Like the only way you're going to get this is to overbid by X. Now it's coming, that part of the industry is coming down to where negotiating is becoming a bigger deal.
It
Again.
Is. Yeah.
Like it's always been.
Yep.
We just had that anomaly.
That's right.
All right. So then you negotiate, let's say you settle. Then next up is home inspection.
Yeah, exciting stuff. Everybody hates it.
You have to get really? That was like the worst.
It's like going to a doctor for a physical. Nobody enjoys that process. You do it because you respect your body and you want to live long.
Yeah.
But nobody enjoys getting a physical.
Nope. Got when we had our house inspected, what did that guy said? One of the nicest houses, or what do you
most gently used house I've ever seen.
Or something like, it was something weird.
It was something about being gently used.
Yeah. And one of the better houses, it was what, 10 years old.
Yeah.
And I think he said it's one of the nicer. I remember you saying this is about as good as a compliment you're going to get from a home appraisal. But that whole thing is a little bit more of a cat and mouse. Because it goes back to your negotiation, right?
It does. And the problem with it is you're talking about one person's opinion. Now, they've got evidence. This inspector goes through, they just got paid a pretty significant lump sum of money, $600-700. It could be on the size of the house. It could be up to $1,000 you pay for a home inspection. So this home inspector's kind of got to justify what he just got paid. So
what you're telling me, if I read between the lines, they're going to find something.
They will, 100%. They better find something.
Okay.
I mean... Think about the client that's like, God, what a waste. I mean, the whole industry could go away if inspectors didn't find anything. They exist because
no offense, but that sucks.
It does.
That's like, I'm paying somebody to make my negotiation even harder.
It does. Yep.
Depending on the side.
That's exactly what happens. Well, and And most of the time they're able to find issues. I mean, they find stuff that all of us would find, but they have the benefit of they'll spend 3 hours at a home looking at things, whereas we'll go in for 30 or 45 minutes and we absorb the general condition, but they'll put on a 50-page, 60-page report, all the different, I mean, if a light bulb doesn't work, you'll know about it. And
well, even in mine, they had up in the rafters, there was some plywood.
Yep.
And they're like, he brought up, is this, I don't remember what he said, something about
that's
code. And it cost me what, $500 to get some engineer to be like, it's all good. It's not structural.
I was there with the engineer. He looked at it and he said, yep, this is fine. There's no big deal. He wrote a certification letter.
And it cost me whatever, $600 because the inspector was like, I don't know what this is, or is it structural or whatever, because it was just a piece of plywood. It was a piece of plywood.
And that's the issue with this part of the process, because if it is an issue and the inspector didn't make any note or say anything about it, then they have an issue later. They're going to come back and try to sue the inspector. Hey, this is your fault. We hired you to find issues and you missed this one. So the inspector has to say something, but he's not an engineer. He can't say if it's okay or not. He just mentions, we recommend a licensed professional to investigate further. And they still say this multiple times throughout a report, because there's always some, homes are so dynamic and the way they're built is so
it's just
fluid.
part of the process. You got to deal with it. It's like getting the physical. You want to live longer. You got to know where you're deficient.
Yeah.
If you need to take vitamins, take them.
Yep.
Okay. So then you go through your home appraisal, then the final mortgage approval. Is this where this isn't?
Well, the appraisal is different from the inspection. So that appraiser's going to come
home appraisal.
in.
I skipped that.
Yeah. They're going to send, the bank wants to make sure they're not loaning money in a bad situation.
And we had a problem with this.
We did. A big problem.
We had a big problem. We had to get another home appraisal.
Again, and I'll say this on the home inspection because both of these will tie together. On a recent listing, it was an older home, and I knew there were going to be some maintenance issues. So I had a pre-listing inspection done. And there are not a lot of cases I would recommend getting a pre-listing inspection done. It's going to cost upfront money, and whatever you find on the pre-list inspection, you're going to have to fix or disclose. So now you've either got to advertise to buyers like, hey, we have problems with our house, here they are, or you've got to spend the money to fix them. So whatever.
Yep.
But this one case, I said, you know what? I think this is the right time to do it. And my intuition was right. It was a good decision to do it. What got us is the buyer still got their home inspection. So they had a second inspector come in, and I knew some things would be found. The problem was this inspector came back and found significant things that didn't get caught in the first inspection. So there was some disappointment and unmet expectations there. But two different inspectors found two completely different lists, both with substantial sized lists of things. And so appraisals can be the same way. You can hire two different appraisers that will come to two very different conclusions.
Which happened in my case.
That's exactly right.
And the first appraiser, we're like, what? That was the worst case scenario you could ever imagine, because we had sold our house for X. This appraisal came in for like X
a substantial amount of money could have been lost.
What were they thinking?
If we had just said, this is the situation, guess we'll have to deal with it. And and
you're like, no, we're getting another appraisal.
And part of that's working with another great agent. So, it helps to know who's on the other side of the table.
Yeah, because they were fighting, which was weird. Well, she's going to fight because the higher the house is.
Yeah.
Or that person, I shouldn't say.
She also didn't want to risk, the deal falling apart and her having to go show more houses to a client that had just found the perfect house. We just had this one obstacle. Yeah. It's like the house was perfect for a client. It was a big obstacle.
But we got another appraisal and it came back exactly what we wanted and we were good.
Yeah. Sometimes it's just a matter of getting a second opinion, which costs money, because you got to pay a second appraiser to come out. It might be $500 or $600 to get this person to come out. And then you're paying a cost and time. No, buyer paid for that one. But it may add.
I don't even remember.
No, you won't. You don't remember any of those. That was so chaotic for you.
Yeah, it was.
Just because your life's, all the different things that places you were going, things you were doing.
I don't remember.
It was a blur, man.
It was a blur. Oh yeah, because I had spring break and we had that soccer tournament. I wasn't even home and just
moving.
That.
I mean, just
oh yeah,
not
we
to
moved
mention
out.
Packing your things.
I forgot about that. I was so stressed out. That was so. This isn't what this show's about, but I was about to have a nervous breakdown.
Yes.
And it wasn't even about the house. The house was like the least.
And could you imagine not have had a
no? Yeah. I don't even remember what you were doing, let alone what I was doing.
I was not sleeping because I was trying to figure out. But that's what I love, and that's what's so cool about having an agent in your corner. Like my thing is, I want you to go to bed at night and sleep peacefully because Scott's got it.
Yeah.
Scott's got it
I
covered.
felt that way. Like, this isn't a show for me to. You're doing a great
Keep
job
going.
educating, but at the end of the day, like, you were a rock star
Yeah,
through
thank
that. You were a rock star. Keep going.
That's what. Yeah. That's what. Go on. Say more.
What was that? All right. So then we go through the appraisal, the final mortgage approval. Is this really a line item here? Like,
Yeah. Oh man. So like I said, the pre-approval is pretty easy. The final mortgage approval is not very easy. This is where probably 1 in 10 clients will call me at this point in the process, and they'll kind of unload, not on me, but to me.
Did I? I didn't.
No, you didn't.
I don't remember anything about this.
I heard some complaints at the end of the process.
From mine?
Yeah.
From me?
Yeah. About the process, the experience of getting the final approval.
I don't remember.
No one ever has fun. And so I say 1 out of 10 actually vents to me. 10 out of 10 people have frustrations. 9 out of 10 don't share their frustrations with me. 1 out of 10 do.
I was the one.
No,
I'm a
you
jerk.
didn't make the 1 out of 10 list.
Yeah.
You made a comment, which was it's always helpful to know, because you had a unique scenario of buying land and then building. Most people don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
So you had one that was
Oh, it was on the first house, not the house I sold.
right, not the house you sold.
Oh, because I don't remember saying anything. About
You're right.
that.
Yeah. So this would be different if you're buying a house. Getting final mortgage approval is difficult. If you're selling the house, you're just hoping that
This goes through.
yeah. You
That's
have no
why it was
control
no
over
issue.
that. Right.
So, but when I was closing on the construction loan and that whole thing, that's completely different. And that's really what we're talking about here, right? And that's where it's overwhelming and you have to open up the kitchen sink, so to speak. And you're like, why do they need that? You know?
I mean, I had to go to the IRS office, which I didn't know they existed. I when they said you need to go to the IRS, I'm like, how long is it going to take me to get to DC? But there's an IRS office in every major city, and I had to go and I had to wait in the line and was there for a whole day to get a tax transcript because my taxes had been submitted so recently that I had not received back any paperwork, and they didn't send electronically at that time. And so I had to go sit in the office for them to look up my file internally and print out a hard copy that I then hand delivered to the lender. I lost an entire day to that.
That's horrible.
Just due to time. So, it's like I'm in the process of getting a tax return done right now, and I'm so pumped to have it done because it's like a license to buy.
Yes. And then the last thing on here is closing, which is that's when you go and you sign your name for 25 minutes.
That's right. Yep.
Or 45 minutes.
Yeah. If you're buying, it usually takes, about an hour, a little less than. If you're selling, it takes 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah, I remember that.
And a few days before closing, you want to see the documents. The attorney should be able to produce them. Sometimes you got to ask a couple of times. Your agent will do that for you because you want to see the numbers before you're sitting at the table and it feels too late. You can change at the closing table, and everybody should know that. We have found mistakes at the closing table, and the attorney has had to go fix it.
Well, did you know I found out 3 weeks ago, I didn't even tell you this, they screwed up our closing when we bought the land.
No way.
There was a down payment, like an additional $25,000 that I had to pay for something. And we did. Well, that was supposed to go to the builder, not make it on my closing document, which they gave me credit back. So I wrote that check, got the credit back through my loan, and then I had to write the check again to her. And she found it out when she audited her papers, and she's showing me. She's showing me the document, and she's like, "Yeah, you paid the money, but then you took it back." And I was like, "I didn't do that." They're like, "Well, they did."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "So I already paid. I had a check to her, somehow made it back on so they could make the numbers better for me, and then I had to write the same check again." That would just happened 3 weeks ago, and
That's
I was like,
bizarre,
"What?"
man. Yeah.
So even still, there can be mistakes that are made that you don't even realize it until, that was almost a year ago.
Speaking of, I've got a client right now. She bought a house in Concord, not too far from here. And it was sponsored by the city. So they were giving money, down payment money. She bought this whole thing. She was probably the only person in the world that qualified. They had such stringent requirements. You had to make a bunch of money, but have no money. It was the weirdest.
That's weird.
Yes. And so anyway, she bought this house, but she wrote a check to the city. That was a part of it. She had to write a check to the city to cover some fee involved, and the city never cashed the check. 5 years have gone by.
Oh my!
And her bank's like, "Hey, this check was never cashed. What do you want us to do?"
Shut the bank down.
Close
the account. I didn't say that.
Yeah. And I've tried to, I've connected her with certain people just to try to get her a professional opinion.
Was it a lot of money?
A few $1,000s. Yeah. I mean, if it was like a couple $100, I'd be like,
Forget it.
Yeah, move on. Who cares? It was a few $1,000s. And I'm like, we should at least talk to some people about this. But at the end of the day, I'm like, they haven't taken the money out of your account. Treat it like it's yours until somebody comes to find you.
Jeez.
Because
you don't want to not pay it, because then they're going to come back and say, you owe me a couple $1,000.
Yeah, I mean, she's got the evidence that she paid it. It's just somebody else didn't receive it.
It's probably lost.
You can't. Yeah, they say that forgiveness given is not forgiveness until it's accepted and received.
Yep. All right, so let's quickly go over some common hurdles in selling a house. So we've talked a lot about buying. I've been on both sides of that. I actually forgot, because I bought the land so long ago, how much of a headache that was. A headache. I just remembered when you were telling me that. Selling was easy, but what are some issues, like some hurdles that get in the way of somebody that wants to sell? Because right now, it's not as good a time to sell as it was a year ago, but it's still not a bad time. Like I got everything and more than I asked for my sell, and I just sold this spring.
Yep. I just sold with 2 listings go under contract recently, and record prices for what they are in the neighborhood. So
right now in this environment,
right now, one of them was multiple offers. We had 4 offers,
which we did.
Yep. And
so what are some hurdles people
price?
Have to...
Price the home correctly. Nothing can shoot yourself in the foot faster than overpriced. Just because you got overzealous and you perceive that, man, people are still like it's still somewhat of a frenzy, and people are paying what's crazy amounts. And so I'm going to squeeze as much out of this as I can. It's like, no, people are still smart.
Yeah. Which we did intentionally when we first.
Because we knew
in the fall.
We knew that
we didn't care to sell.
Ideally, you prefer to stay in the house anyway for 6 more months.
So we're like, let's go to the very top.
And and you saw it. One person saw it, maybe 2.
And they were like, that's too high. It's too high. And we're like, yeah, we know.
That's right.
Yeah. That's not a shock.
But you got to see firsthand what that does. People won't even come look at it. It's not that people won't make offers. I mean, people won't even think twice.
Correct.
They're just, because they'll jump to the conclusion. It's like, seller's greedy and unreasonable. He's not actually motivated to sell his house. I'm not going to waste my time.
Correct.
And I certainly am not going to go see the house and get emotionally connected, only to be taken for a ride by this,
And then on the flip side, when you're ready to sell and we priced it correctly, it lasted 3 days.
Yep. And there is, on the flip side of that, there is such a thing as pricing too low as well. And I had a buyer client that we went and saw a house. We'd been looking for a while, and I knew this area well. And so we saw a house priced at, 3.25. I said, guys, this house is worth $375. I know that sounds scary. And it's like, part of it's scary for me to tell you that, but like, I know this. This is a $375 house. It appraised for $387. But they got it for $375. And they could have gotten more, but they priced it so low that people were then like offering $340, $350, thinking those were super aggressive offers. And it's like, and in relation to the list price, they were aggressive offers, but they weren't aggressive with the market conditions and what the house is really worth. It was just unique because the neighborhood, all the houses were very different from each other. They, it wasn't a clear-cut subdivision where they're all pretty similar. It's like all the houses were so unique. So you had to price them very individually. But this agent didn't do that. He kind of just took some averages and threw it together. And I'm like, no, this house is far more valuable. And the appraiser saw the same thing I did, but even more. And the buyers got a deal on it and loved it. Still love it. Yeah.
Any other big things that get in the way, common issues?
I don't know. There's all kinds of things. I mean, getting the home ready. People that can't have a house clean.
Which we were very particular on when we sold ours. And we got so many compliments.
Oh, man. You saw, how far that goes with people.
Yeah. And my wife and I fought over that. Do you remember? Because not fought, but I'm like cleaning the closets.
Yes.
Because, people look.
They do.
So I was like super particular. And I remember you saying, dang, these things are like pristine.
Yes.
Like everything was perfect.
I was blown away. I did an open house and baked some cookies. And so I had to open some drawers and cabinets. And I was like, this is insane.
No.
It's like, I wish I could live like this.
That was my OCD. It is like our house is mostly like that all the time because I'm super OCD. So my wife cleans everything you can see and I clean everything you don't. So I went very particular. I went above and beyond the Call of Duty when we were selling ours. But we got, everybody that walked through that house was priced right. Almost every single one was like, man, I can't believe how organized, how nice everything is.
People will overlook other flaws when they can see people take pride in calling this their home.
Mm-hmm.
It blows me away. I mean, the house we're in the process of selling right now, it is on the side of a cliff, and it's a beautiful home. But people move to Charlotte, they don't think of owning a mountain home.
Yeah.
But this is like
It's in Charlotte?
Yeah, this is in
wow.
this is in Matthews, but it's built into a cliff. I mean, I had a contractor out there today solving some problems for us, and he looked around the side of the house. He said, "Whoa, we are way up high."
Oh, wow.
Because the thing just plummets down in the back of the house. And I knew that was going to be an obstacle for people amongst other factors. It's an older home. It's got some
Sounds like no backyard.
deferred maintenance. Yeah, there is a backyard, but it's very removed from the house. So it's not like kids
Down
can be
the
in the,
cliff.
yeah, you can't have kids in the backyard while you're in the kitchen cooking. It's like, we got to go on a family adventure to go to the backyard. We're going to the backyard for the afternoon.
It's going to take us 10 minutes to get down there.
But they had their house so beautifully done inside. Not like, we talk about staging, you know, staging could be bringing company in that brings in custom furniture and decor and stuff like that. They had it staged, but not like that. They had it staged with their own belongings. Excess belongings and excess, you know, personal possessions they had removed from the home. They had it staged where it's like, my ideal, if I had a magazine editor coming over to do a piece on my house, how would I want it to look? And
That's
what would
cool.
it need to look like so that they don't end up saying, "Oh, this is not the house for our magazine. We're going to go with somebody else." And they had the house so beautiful that, you know, it's like, it was still tricky because of the lay of the land. But we were able to find a seller, and I firmly believe
Seller or buyer?
we found a buyer for our listing.
Oh, wow.
And I firmly believe a big part of that was the way it presented and how clean it was, how organized, just meticulous level of detail.
And it all helped.
Yeah, it did. Because the house had plenty of flaws. I mean, it's just an older home. It's got a lot of little things that, you know, need to be tended to.
So this laundry list of things which we have on here of, you know, common, the biggest is price and preparation of the home.
That's right. Yep. And you got to have an agent that can do great marketing. I can't tell you how many times I still see iPhone photography. As great as iPhone cameras are, they are not meant for real estate photography.
Because you brought in super high-end
Yeah.
people and you did your video with the drone.
And there's no excuse not to.
Yeah.
The cost of it, I mean, sure, it's expensive in regards to not doing it, but like the benefit and the value you get from it, the exposure you get.
It's way better.
Well, and what's the first thing you do when you go see a house that you potentially want to buy? You go back to your house because you're going to talk it over now and think about, you know, what kind of offer we're going to put in. What are you going to do? You're going to pull up the pictures.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's a video to go with it, oh, you just really blew some minds. Because the video's got background music. You know, it's like, imagine if you had background music playing in your daily life. You'd walk around feeling like a rock star. If you had like a batter coming up the home plate, it's like, you know, if you had a walk-up song playing wherever you go based on your mood, it's like, you know, you're painting a picture for somebody's life. And so, you know, the pictures are just one aspect, but you put a video in there, people connect with that. And it's not that you're driving the price to unreasonable places, but you're helping overcome obstacles for the buyer. Because the buyer's undoubtedly going to have some concerns, whatever they may be. I don't know, it's not in the school district we wanted.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, it's not in the neighborhood we wanted. I don't know, it's not on a cul-de-sac. I don't know, it backs up to this thing. I don't know, it's older than what we wanted. Like, there's always an obstacle. It's never a perfect house. But when they can connect with it emotionally, it's easier for them to overcome those obstacles.
Yeah. So, all right, one last thing, then we're going to stop talking. I want to talk about, because we've talked about the overwhelming aspect of buying, selling, obstacles, issues, and we've talked about so many different things on this show. To such extent that I'm certain it's going to end up being 2 shows. But I want to talk about the pros and cons of the real estate agent. And how I want to do this, which I think would be fun, is I want you to talk about the cons and I'm going to talk about the pros. From a standpoint of we can go back and forth to a degree, and I'm going to stick up for, because it'd be easy for you to stick up for it.
Yeah, of course.
But I want you to do the other side.
Oh, I love the cons.
Yeah, and I'll do the reasons why.
And I'm really well suited to talk about the cons because I evaluate myself and my own business on these too. I mean, I've got to think long term, you know, about my business as a real estate agent. And it's like, you know, hey, what am I going to do to make sure I still have a job in real estate 10 years from now as technology develops and everything else? It's like, you know, what am I going to do different? And so I think about the cons of why am I obsolete?
What's the number one con for hiring a real estate agent?
Number one con is the cost.
Cost.
Yep.
Why is that a con though? Because you don't get to keep it?
people have limited resources. And when you think about, maybe an agent's getting paid, $15,000, $20,000 on a particular transaction and what you could do alternatively with that money, it's really tempting to try to do it without, but it comes at a different cost. Nothing's free.
Nothing's
You do
free.
it yourself. You're paying that price in another form.
Yeah, because for me, if I were to say what's the number one pro for hiring somebody like you, it's the expertise and knowledge. Like, you guided that entire process. No matter the 2 different times that I've worked with you, it was so seamless and easy. You brought stuff. We went, we showed, we looked, we signed. It was not without headache, but that wasn't necessarily because of you. But at the end of the day, your expertise, your knowledge changed everything for me because I was able to fully engage in my job. I was able to fully engage with my family. I didn't have to take any excess time. Now, you might say that comes at a cost of 5 to 6% or whatever the commission is. But at the end of the day, I stepped back and I was like, that's the best money I've ever spent, because I wouldn't have probably got what I wanted. I wouldn't know where to look. And I was that guy that's like, look here, look here, look here. I did what I thought was fun and looking around, and then you did everything else. So from that standpoint, like, if I were to take that on, it probably would have cost me a heck of a lot more than 5 to 6% in commission, because I would have been burning in at both ends. Who knows how that might have affected my job?
Yep.
Because I would have had a lot less time to give to my work.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if I could have handled that.
Yeah.
What's another con for you?
Having a middleman. You're not going to have that direct line of communication with the other party. You've got to go through technically 2 middlemen if you've got your agent and the other party's got their agent. And so it's going to elongate some of these transmissions of information. And I think that can be frustrating for clients sometimes, because sometimes things just take some time and there's nothing wrong. But I'm not going to text you every hour. Hey, by the way, I know you're waiting for those documents. I don't have them yet.
So, all right. So this is kind of fun. So you have less control, no middleman. On your side, when you're having to deal with a homeowner because they don't have a rep, be honest, is that frustrating? Is the professionalism completely different? Is it a pleasant experience? Is it a terrible experience? Because my next pro for hiring an agent is the fact that you're so well connected. You're so, everybody. Not every agent, is well known. You meet new ones all the time, but you run into the ones that work. There's a small group that probably sell 80% of the homes in Charlotte.
Yeah.
And a very smaller part that sell the rest, right? I mean, 80-20 rule rules the world.
Yes.
So having a good agent, good company, you're so well connected on your side. On the con side, you don't have that. What happens? Like, why is that so bad? And how can that hurt you?
Yeah. I mean, it's a little frustrating when I work with I'm representing a buyer. We did this recently, and they were buying a house that the seller didn't have an agent, and it's hard. They're totally helpless, and you can help them with information, but you're not there to protect them. And you don't want them at all to feel taken advantage of. It's like you want to respect them, but you're not their agent. Mm-hmm. And it's a weird place to be in.
Because you're like, I can help you out so much, but you don't want my help.
Yep. Man, but sometimes they're also asking for help, but there's a limit on the amount of help I can provide.
Because you're just nothing more than a stranger.
Not their agent.
Yeah. All right. So what's another con? You've got what? Misaligned interests? I don't know if you'd want to say that one. Or communication?
Yeah. I mean, there's no secret that just like a loan officer, an agent, they're not going to get paid until they sell something, and I've always found it comical that people ask an agent's opinion, including mine, on, hey, is it a good time to buy? I'm like, well, I'm motivated to tell you it's a great time to buy.
Always a good time.
Because if I tell everybody it's a horrible time to buy, nobody should be buying a house. It's like, I'm going out of business.
Yeah.
And so, I have to find the silver lining in any market, in any economy. And fortunately, it's like, I think you and I are of the same mindset that it's like, there really is no bad time to buy. There are better times to buy than others. But if you zoom out and look at big picture, every purchase will be okay in the end.
Well, and if you look at Charlotte specifically, you know, we're typically always in the top 5, top 10 fastest growing cities in the U.S. We're the last to get hurt in a downturn, first to recover in the upturn. You know, I don't want to say we're a bubble, but we're pretty dang close to it.
Yeah.
And, you know, pausing in an area like this, like right now, I know San Francisco is getting really hurt from a real estate perspective. Cities getting crushed. I mean, huge companies are leaving there by the droves. Like in areas that were a bustling metropolis are now like a rundown homeless area. So there are certain cities, and I don't mean to be picking on San Francisco, but it's making the news like every day. Real estate there, like great time to sell, great time to buy. That's up for debate. You know, how fast is it going to recover? Is it going to recover? I don't have an answer for that. Charlotte, good or bad, we're making a lot of really good decisions in this city. You know, we can nitpick depending on the county you're in. But, you know, at the end of the day, like Charlotte's a great place. And waiting sometimes can be tough, like, because real estate, I know it's going to go through a change here, but how much of that change and trying to time
and by the time you do it, we've already missed it.
Could you?
I know. Yeah.
That's a tough call.
I think that's the key for people. It's, you know,
there will always be deals, no matter what happens.
That's right.
If the economy keeps going straight up and Charlotte never gets hurt, there will always be good deals to be had. And on the flip side, you can always make the wrong decision when the economy is going the other direction. You know, you can always make a bad decision or a good decision in any economy.
That's right.
And that's why I personally think it's so important to work with an expert.
Yeah.
Because time is money. You know, I say this all the time. I mean, I whatever. I think your time is way more valuable than your money. And at the end of the day, you're a time saver for somebody like me. That's not for everybody. You know, with technology nowadays, people think they can do everything. It still comes at a cost.
It's true.
And that's depending on the situation. Like, I'm never going to work on my car. I'm never going to, like, you know, say, hey, mechanic, I'm never going to hire you because I can do it myself. Never going to happen. You know, certain things in my house, I'm probably always going to hire people. You know, cutting my grass. Can I cut the grass? Yes. Am I going to do it? Probably not. It's not therapeutic to me.
That's right.
Some people, it's like, I love the smell of cut grass. Sure.
I can live without it.
Yeah, I don't need it. I'll smell it when they cut it.
That's right.
All right. So 2 other things I want to talk about is the big one I'm just talking about here, saving time and energy. That's such a big deal. Well, actually 3. Guidance through closing. That is such a stressful part because there's so much stuff. It's overwhelming, and just having somebody who's been there, done that is so important. But I think the biggest way that any real estate agent worth their value makes money, it's through that negotiating. Negotiating, I think, is the number one skill set where it becomes invaluable from a real estate agent, because I stink at it. I just hate it. I'm non-confrontational.
Well, so I am too, but that's what's funny. I'm non-confrontational. I really don't like negotiating in the frame of what people think of it normally. But that's where I figured out so early in my career that if I just have more information than the other party,
you can negotiate better.
Yeah, I mean, but it doesn't feel like a negotiation. I'm not sitting, you know, it's not some arm wrestle where, you know, we're duking it out verbally, you know, abusing each other to shake each other down to meet the other's demands. It's not like that. But if you have more information, it becomes pretty simple, and it can be pretty friendly too. I mean, and sometimes I'll use my own clients, you know, kind of put them on the altar to sacrifice them and be like, you know, my clients can't afford to do that. And you know, I say that when I know it's the case. I'm like, my clients cannot afford to eat that cost. And what's the seller going to do? Crap. That stinks, but I guess I'll eat the cost because I don't want to lose the deal.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Well, I can't thank you enough for, you know, all the information that we've gone over today. This has been, it's been very good. It's been very good for me personally. Some of the stuff I've actually forgot, you know, it's like, why would a lady have another child after experiencing a child? You know, all the pain, you know, and it's kind of the same thing with house. Like, you go through some of it, it is just horrible, you know, but then you forget.
Yeah.
And legitimately forgot some of the struggles that I went through in closing on that land. And then when you said that, it didn't click right away. And I was like, oh, wait, yeah, I couldn't stand that loan officer. And at times, good guy, but, prone to making mistakes. And, but yeah, I think this was great information. I'm so thankful that you're here. I'm so thankful that I know you.
Thank you.
And that we've become friends outside of the fact that we get to work together from time to time. So
love it, Paul. Thanks for having me on.
All right, man.